God didn't just love the funk Dr. Willoughby, he loves you guys as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that towards the end. Thank you, Aaron.
You know, it's funny. I went to churches when I was growing up, and we didn't have concerts like this. We were Presbyterians. So, I want to talk tonight. My name is Jason Willoughby, and I want to talk to you about a tough subject: depression and suicide. We've had young adults in our very city and in our county take their own life during the pandemic. Statistics are saying that depression rates are skyrocketing, especially among youth and young adults. So I want to get real, I want to get really honest, because I want you to hear not a sugar-coated story, but something that's really deep and dark and tough. And so my first suicide attempt was when I was 6 years old. I didn't know it at the time, but I had what's known as seasonal affective disorder. Every winter, I would literally go way down to the pit emotionally every year of my childhood. And it would get better around May, but it was like 6 months of torture every single year. And I tried to choke myself with my bare hands when I was 6. I just remember just feeling so despairing, like nobody loved me. And then when my second and more serious attempt was when I was 11, I developed a plan to poison myself. And I saw these things growing on my neighbor's rose bushes, these bulbous-like growths. And so I decided to take some water in a cup and cut these things up, mix them together, and drink it, expecting to die. And after half an hour, it didn't happen because those things are called rose hips, and they actually make tea out of them. They're actually good for you. So in my childishness, I was literally trying to commit suicide. I made an attempt. And, you know, it's tough because there's a part of our life that happens when nobody's looking, when we're totally alone, what's really going on deep within us. And it's tough to talk about because it's a little embarrassing, it's a lot embarrassing, and because we feel like nobody else really understands or would care. So we bottle it up and we handle it, but we don't handle it. So one part of my problem is I had this seasonal effect. So some depression is caused by biochemistry, brain chemistry, I call it biodepression. And sometimes we just have something wrong with our body that causes our mood to be messed up. And, you know, if that's you, please go to the doctor and get some medical help because you should be able to get a lot of relief. They have medicines now they didn't have. But another part of my problem was life circumstances. And I'm reading my notes because I don't want to forget something important, so please forgive me here. My emotionally absent mom was unable to read the distress on her 2 kids' faces. So both my sister and I ended up feeling like orphans. Like nobody noticed, nobody understood, nobody cared. And that was at home. And then, because we felt like strangers in our own home and we fell out of whack, we didn't really have a great time in school either. We felt very much like marginal people, like outsiders. We called them misfits. And that was a nice way of putting it back then. And it's pretty tough when you feel like you have nobody else and you're totally alienated, totally isolated. And that's where I was at. And when life is so painful and when loneliness marks our life, that's when depression can really hit us. And for some of you, you feel totally alone. And you're not the only one. And I'm gonna share something in a moment that could make a pretty big difference pretty quickly. So hang with me. My final piece of my depression beyond seasonal affective stuff and just feeling unloved and disconnected from anyone was I was raised under a value system, values of performance. So every time my sister talked about something good that happened to her, my parents would talk about all the good things I was doing. So like we were always compared. We could never win the game. Never good enough. And it's pretty tough when you feel like you can never win and you're always compared and no amount of success. I mean, I had trophies, I had awards, ribbons, and it was never enough. It didn't help me get out of the pit because I was just not even close to being good enough. And so a lot of times in America, have you noticed that in America, we think success is the only way to live? Have you noticed that? And have you noticed on social media, there's like 10 times the amount of pressure to look a certain way and have your act together and be awesome and better. And I'm going to tell you, it's a lie. Those people don't look good in real life as they do, with filters happening in real life. But there's all that pressure going on. And when you're like 13, 14, 15, you're looking around and thinking, everyone else is so cool, and I'm a geek. I don't fit in. And so it's a tough time. It was tough for me. I know all too well. And we just sang some songs that talked about dead ends, wrong answers for depression and despair. I tried everything. I tried using mind-altering, mood-altering substances, i.e. alcohol and drugs. And it didn't help my depression. It only made my life more miserable, and I ended up more depressed. So substances and experiences, and then I tried romantic relationships, and I ended up experiencing the teenage version of divorce. You know what I'm talking about? Those bad relationships, that break up, and I had one of those. It was awful. It didn't make me happy. It made me even more depressed. I tried music, and I was in a rock band. It looked like we were going places, and then the band broke up. And I know it sucked. It was like, I went from like, I'm going places to like, nothing. So all the things I was doing to try to be that successful person, I kept sliding back down. It never got there. So here's the hard thing. And I tried the occult, mystic religions, powers, and it's funny, it only made my life worse and more dark. It didn't help. So there's a lot of like wrong answers out there that seem like they look good, like they could work, but they don't. And that's what makes it, and when you try them all and nothing works, then you're even more despairing. You're even more depressed. And so, it's a tough place to be. So I just want to say this, I'm going to read this. The worst part of suicide is it's partially right. Something needs to die. The wrong answer is it's the physical body. That's not the problem. The physical body isn't the problem. But there's something inside of us that's killing us. And that thing drives us to despair. It drives us to extremes. It drives us to self-harm and self-hatred. And boy, there's so many people out there cutting themselves and self-harming because it's all self-hatred. You just end up hating yourself. And you try to cut yourself to feel some pain, to get rid of the emotional pain, but it just doesn't work. So there's something in you and in me that would rather destroy us than give up control, than let go. And that's our wounded pride. That's the part of us that's like, I'm in control, I know what I'm doing, and yet we don't and we aren't. And so my rescue happened. So hope I'm not boring you, but this is now we're getting to like where the real answer is. And the rescue happened after a kegger party when I tried and failed again to stay sober. But I wanted to be around my friends, and all my friends were doing the drinking and the stuff, so I joined in. It was so lonely to try to get out of addiction because all my friends were going the opposite direction. And so it was lonely. And so I kept falling back in. I finally had to admit I was out of control. I was out of control and I was trapped. More me could not solve the problem of me. And that's the biggest lie that's out there, that you're enough for you. More you is the answer. Just double down. Try harder. Be better. More pressure, more pressure, more pressure. But then it leaves you just more depressed because you can never be anything but a failure under that impossible standard. So I had to admit something that was true that I didn't want to admit because that was painful and scary. I'm out of control. And I did something really weird. And I don't know why I did it, but I had this red Bible I got in 4th grade that I never read. We used to have these award Bibles in Sunday school, so I put it in the shelf and I forgot. And I opened up my Bible because I was bored. And because I guess I was looking for answers. And I opened up my Bible to this book of Matthew, chapter 11. I call it Bible roulette. I did Bible roulette. I just opened the Bible and put my finger down, and this fellow Jesus talked about, come to me if you're weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I was like, that's me. If you're carrying an impossible burden, and you're so tired of the burden of you, you're crushed. You're just weighed down under that impossible burden because you can't fix you, but you have to somehow be better, but you can't be, and you're trapped. If that's you, Jesus says, if you come to me, and if you bring your burden to me, and trust me with yourself, and put yourself in my hands, if you give control over to him. Now, we worship control in America, and that's a scary thing to give up, control. I know. It took me months to get to the place where I was going. And yet, weirdly enough, I did that. I said, okay, here, take my life. I give up. I surrender. Have it. And I went to bed. And I didn't expect anything to happen. I had no expectations whatsoever. All I knew is I hit the end of my rope, and I gave it up, and I was done. And I got up the next morning, and the strangest thing happened, because I woke up, and it was like I was alive on the inside in a way I've never been alive before. And I was not burdened. I was freed. It was light on the inside instead of dark. It was freed up instead of heavy. And I knew that God was living inside of me. I would never, ever be alone ever again. And just like Eric said, he loved me in a way I didn't think it was possible to be loved. It was just way beyond romance, achievement, anything on earth. It met me at such a deep level, and it changed me. And I've been sober for 39 years, thanks to that intervention. So what we need an outside intervention of someone infinitely way high and big to come from the outside in. And when we yield control, he takes over, takes charge, and he puts things right, and he releases new things inside you, and you're free. And joy came into my life. Now, I don't want to do a false commercial. How many of you here just tune out commercials? You stop listening? I mean, I hate commercials, so I'm not going to do. So I have still had problems with my mood since 39 years ago, but I've never had to face it alone. And I've always been able to bring that burden to someone who loved me utterly and re-surrender that to him. And he loves me and lifts me up. So here's the tagline. If there was hope for me, there's hope for you. Right here, right now, tonight. All this week, I have had this sense that for someone tonight, this might be a life or death moment. That you're on the edge, and you're vulnerable, and you're entertaining thoughts, and maybe even have a plan to end it. And I want to tell you personally, very, very personally, please don't. Choose life. Choose to surrender. Let Jesus come in. Let him do what he can do and reorder your life and live within you and be your perfect friend, your forever friend. Let him love you to the depths of your core of yourself and make you a new person. And you will find not a problem-free life, but a life of love and friendship and presence that you never imagined you could have. And so, can we just close our eyes for a moment? I just want to lead us in a little prayer. Father, I'm very aware that these moments are not every day, and that everyone here tonight may have come for any different reason, but they're here. And they're here to hear this. And I pray, Lord, that if there's someone here who is at the end of their rope, and
total despair and tired of controlling, tired of trying to make everything work, and tired of hating themselves and feeling like a failure and always condemned, I pray that they would be able to, even in this moment, in the quietness of their heart, open that door and say to you, Lord Jesus, please come in, intervene, come from the outside, come into me, take over the burden of my life, love me where I'm the least lovable, help me and lift me up, and help them to understand that if they do that, you promise that you will come in, you will honor that trust and love them and change them.